Welcome, friends. This is James Corbett of Corbettreport.com, continuing our series on social media alternatives. And this week we're going to look at a social media alternative that's existed quite a bit longer than a lot of the new ones that are popping up online these days. It's Minds.com, and today we're talking to the founder of Minds.com, Bill Ottman. Bill, thanks for joining us on the program today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's get down to brass tacks. What is Minds.com and why should people join?
So Minds is an open source social networking platform where you earn crypto for your contributions to the network. And we're encrypted, free software. We sort of care about internet freedom on a variety of different levels and are really just trying to reward people for their energy online. It seems like we deserve that these days.
It certainly does. And internet freedom, online privacy, a lot of these issues are why I'm prompted to be doing this series in the first place and why I think a lot of people are interested in escaping the Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube matrix of control. So let's talk about how Minds can help people do that. As I say, I believe that Minds was founded in 2014 and then launched in 2015. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what prompted you to do that way back when few people were talking about these issues?
Yeah, our initial launch gained some big traction around our encryption features. So our messenger, we have zero knowledge of the content of user conversations. And unlike, we're on Skype right now. So we know that Microsoft is scanning our messages and for a variety of reasons. Facebook, Google, they're scanning everyone's messages to target ads at you. And this is all without consent, opt-in by default. And so, whether it's privacy, transparency, rewards, monetization, we know that inevitably there's going to be something that rises up to be competitive with major social networks that flips all of those things on their head and, is much more powered by the people. I feel like, if you look at what Wikipedia did, very community-oriented, it disrupted a lot of those old, Encarta. Where's Encarta? Not that Wikipedia is your best source of information. There's plenty of problems with Wikipedia, but it proves something important.
It did indeed. And I think one aspect of that is the sort of decentralization and taking away of the middlemen that have been gatekeepers of information, which I think is one of the things that social media that's always been the promise of social media. Now we're starting to see what that is playing out like in the mainstream with all of these social networks now trying to crack down on their users and people being identified as Russian bots for spreading the wrong type of political wrongthink and all of this. So let's talk about what the solutions and answers to this are. And one term or one word that you used there that I think is important was open source. What does that mean in the Minds.com context?
So all of our software is free for anyone to inspect, share, take, sell, do whatever they want to it as long as they show their changes with the rest of the community. Sort of the mandate of the GPL license. And it's a really beautiful thing. It sort of keeps sharing happening, makes it so that you always have the ability to understand what the code is doing to you. People in the past 10 years have started to care about food transparency, but really app transparency is going to be emerging more. And maybe there'll be sections of the App Store that's like the organic, non-GMO labeled section. And that's really what we're trying to bring awareness around. And, the solutions that we're offering are around reach especially. So what Facebook's doing is strangling your reach. You used to get the ability to reach your fans. If you had a subscriber base, you could, get access to them when you post it. Now it's only 2% of your own followers are even seeing your post. Even if you only have a few hundred friends on Facebook, then they're often not seeing your post in the news because it's not chronological. So Minds is 100% chronological. We're never going to change that. Any curation is up to you if you want to opt into different types of feeds. And additionally, you earn tokens for your activity. So when you receive votes, shares, comments, when you make referrals, You earn these tokens, then you can use them to boost your post for more views. Right now, a token gives you about 1,000 views. You can boost out of your network. That's what people want online, is to reach people. So when they take that away, it's sort of antisocial.
Right, let's talk about that aspect of it, because the Minds token, I think, was fairly recently introduced. It wasn't there from the beginning. So tell us about the introduction of that token, why it's necessary, and how people go about exchanging it.
So right now we're still on the Ethereum Rinkbeat testnet. So you can earn them and they're usable on Minds, but off Minds they're not usable. We're still going through security audits and tweaking some of the features a little bit. So if you're on there and you have suggestions, definitely contact me, go into the support group, make suggestions. This is the time where the community is really molding how it's going to work. But we moved to the blockchain away from our internal structure just because we wanted to take ourselves out of the equation. We don't feel the need to interfere with economic relationships between users. One of the cool tools that we allow is for channels to target each other directly for advertising. So I could send you an offer for 100 tokens to share my post. Instead of having to go through some centralized network, we want brands to be able to directly interface. And, at the end of the day, we also just applied WebTorrent to our video system. So decentralizing the video, other content, we just want it out of our hands. The tech is still immature generally in decentralized world, but we're just trying to make one step at a time towards putting it in the people's hands.
Well, as I say, there are a lot of sort of new social media alternatives popping up seemingly every day or every week at this point. And we've talked about some of them on this program, Steam It and DTube and BitChute and these types of platforms. Tell us a little bit how Minds compares and contrasts to some of those alternatives that are popping up.
Sure. So Steam It is more specifically a blogging platform. We have sort of more of your general social networking type features like groups and newsfeed and status posts and images and videos and this kind of stuff. We also have a way for channels to subscribe to each other with crypto on a monthly basis for different rewards, more of like a crowdfunding system. And the way the voting works on Steemit is different. On Steemit, the more Steam you hold, the more power you have. And that's how the rewards are distributed. So if you get these people with a lot of Steam to vote on your stuff, then you get more rewards. On Minds, it's based on raw engagement, and everyone's vote is worth the same. So we think it's a little bit more fair. I mean, I'll give Steam credit. I think that they're open source, which I appreciate. I think I haven't been able to find their back end code, but I think they are. And then BitChute's actually not open source, so they're more just a video hosting service, and I think they're using WebTorrent as well.
That's right. So tell us about the feedback that you've gotten from your users. What's the response been to Minds.com?
I mean, overwhelmingly positive. We did a equity crowdfunding round last year, and we raised, we're totally funded by our community. We raised about $1 million from like 1,500 community members. We might be doing another one this year. And the weird thing is that even though, we're just over 1 million users, people are finding it easier, especially small to medium-sized creators, to gain an audience on Minds than even on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Because if you don't really have an audience on those networks, it's like you're speaking into a void, and you really just need to find some rare viral spark in order to catch a fire. And because we have this way to boost out and reach people just based on the work that you put in, it's been a great reaction because people actually feel heard. They're not getting censored and all that stuff.
Well, tell people who have never used Minds, and I hope they will at least go to Minds.com to take a look around and see what it's like. But tell people about the sort of the setup of it. What's the closest analogy that people might be familiar with? It's not a Facebook, it's not a Twitter, it's not a YouTube, but it's some kind of mixture of those types of platforms. What exactly can you do on Minds?
Yeah, I mean, it'll feel like some sort of weird hybrid of all of them, really. And except you have a wallet where all of your tokens are stored, and there's a little lightning bolt on everybody's post, so you can wire them tokens, and you have a balance. And so it's just more incentivization. And I mean, the weird thing about what's happening with apps is they're all sort of coalescing into the same thing. If you look at like Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Snapchat, I mean, we're all doing the same thing. It's just the difference of what's the value structure underneath it. Is it based on open source philosophy? Is it transparent? Is it protecting your privacy? And Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Tumblr, all of them, they're just not. None of their code's open source. We don't know what they're doing about surveillance. It's just totally corrupt. And so hopefully a bunch of us alternatives can sort of work together to rise up and become competitive. But at the end of the day, we have to do the work to getting competitive and making sure that our features are as good. And so we're getting there. And yeah, I mean, hit up. I think it's important to just vote with your energy online, sign up for these networks, put the energy in, just, show solidarity. That matters. That helps us grow. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just symbolic to put your energy there. And the same applies to your browser. Use open source browsers, use Firefox, use Brave, use open source operating systems if you feel like going down that rabbit hole, and use Linux. It's not that hard. I mean, and then it's just a matter of turning your computer on. And then every time you turn your computer on, every time you open the browser, every time you hit a social network, you're empowering those networks. And that is really how the network effect starts happening.
Well, a very empowering message, and one that I obviously resonate with. I've talked a lot about open source and its importance in the past, and I even frame the Corbettreport as open source intelligence news, because I think this is the way forward if we are to defeat the gatekeepers of our current reality. But on that note, obviously censorship is one of the key issues surrounding social media alternatives for at least myself and content creators like me. And I realize censorship can be there's a lot of different ways to approach it, not just the political censorship that we're starting to see, the crackdown coming in Facebook and Twitter and these platforms. But of course, there are also issues of pornography and other types of content that most people probably don't want to see in their social media posts and that sort of thing. So how does Minds.com deal with those issues?
So if it's legal in the US, it's legal to be on Minds. And we've just taken a fairly basic approach at that. And getting wrapped up in the subjectivity, on the fringe issues, honestly, nudity is fine, but we have good filters in place to mark explicit content. And you don't have to see that if you don't want to. That's actually the one thing I'll give Tumblr credit for. They're pretty good on free speech, but it's proprietary and surveillance based. So, they're not doing it exactly right. I think that when you jump over the line in terms of making these subjective decisions about within the legal world, what is not okay and what is okay, that's when it's just over. You've lost. And so, there's still obviously inciting violence and, copyright is complicated, but so we have to abide by the law. But in terms of subjective feedback on, if something is with hate speech, it's nuanced. Every piece of content is different. And so you have to make a context-based individual decision on each piece of content. And that's been working well so far. And ultimately, you either want to be in a world where ideas you disagree with are there and you can engage them and the battle of ideas will take place and the best ideas will win, or you want to be in some sort of a walled garden. But actually, we're about to release a white paper that shows how censorship actually amplifies violence and extremism. There's actually dozens of studies showing that when you do this, it draws more attention to these things. It actually causes radicalization to intensify. I mean, it's obvious pretty much. And it's almost like physics. It's just like a natural flow. When you hide something, people want to see it. It's the Streisand effect.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's absolutely part of what's going on right now. Cracking down on these certain political ideologies only makes them more sexy. Ooh, wow, there must be something there. And I think that I don't think that the people who are running these social networks are stupid enough not to know that. So that's probably a whole other issue. But it is extremely important.
I mean, Reddit is an interesting example because they were obviously originally very much based on free speech. Then they went on this banning frenzy. And there was a recent statement in an AMA with their founders saying, one user asked, is racism okay on Reddit? And, this day and age, this was like 3 weeks ago, the co-founder of Reddit said, yeah, it's okay. And then the media jumped on him, what do you mean it's okay? And then so he had to come back and clarify when that he said, oh, no, racists are not welcome on Reddit. But he was still saying that they're allowed. So, because those guys know, those people are well aware what happens when you ban ideas, because they're dealing with trolls and they're dealing with all of this madness happening on the internet. And they know what pisses people off and what can foster a more healthy environment. And I think that, unfortunately, they caved to the pressure to start all of these bans rather than what we're trying to do is create a much more mature, honest global conversation about how do we actually lower violence and, harmful extremism in the world. We need to, look at this as a network of networks and understand what are we really doing here and how are we leading this conversation.
All right. Well, finally, I always want to leave it up to the people out there if this is a social media network for them or not, and to ask them to explore it. So, of course, they can go to Minds.com and do that. But for people who are interested, what is the sign-up process? What kind of DNA, blood samples, and or next of kin do they have to leave in order to get a Minds.com account?
Actually, nothing. And so you can be anonymous if you want to. You don't have to give us any personal information, and we encourage that. There's no if you want to, you don't even need to give us a real email, to be honest. But I would encourage you to, because then we can contact you in certain ways, gives us more direct access to you. But we encrypt everybody's personal information, and we don't even want you to give it to us if you don't want to.
Well, that's a pretty attractive policy, I think, because, again, people are wary about giving their personal info to corporations and other entities that they may not know about. So, I hope people will at least check it out. Minds.com. This is Bill Ottman, and I do appreciate the fact that you encouraged me to get on the platform over a year ago. It's been a while, and I do use it. I do post there, so I hope people check out the Corbettreport on Minds as well. And if you're there, hit me up. And I think we'll leave it there. Bill, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, James.